I'm pleased to have you all here for this important appointment, I would say, because as a CPA, we are really trying to keep our community connected, and the idea is to keep it connected through the work of young scholars that, of course, have opportunities to present their work in journals and maybe in conferences. However, we think that they also, let's say, um, um, should have a special place where to present their work and also in a more, I would say, relaxed way where it's possible to discuss, where we are not really constrained with time. And I'm very happy to welcome Flora Gatti. I would say for different reasons. One reason is that she's a young, brilliant scholar. I know her from some times, and I think that she's doing a great work. We have been collaborating in different fields, and I think that she's really promising, and she has done also some very interesting work. And of course, the work that she's presenting today is one, I would say, of the most interesting, because dealing with modern local community, the ubiquitous social ecosystem, and the role of social media in community experiences and interaction, I think it's critical. It's very important. I would say that it's very important for community psychologists because, of course, we work within interaction. We are trying to support community development. We are trying to understand and support positive interaction between groups and communities. And let's say we have been probably most of the time being worried and engaged with local community. But of course, we have also been challenged by the experience that we had in the last 2 years with the COVID and with the fact that everything moved online. And in a way, I think that, of course, when I say that we have been focusing most on, let's say, local communities, I do not want to ignore that we have been also, that we have also some colleagues like Donata who have been interested in what happens in online community, in virtual community from, I would say, many years ago. However, I think that now we are probably facing a different challenge because probably when Donata started to work on this topic, we were thinking about online communities versus local communities, or we were basically thinking about those as different somehow realities. Now, I think that we need to consider the interconnection between what happens online, on live, on site, as we say now. And also we need to consider the kind of challenges that this poses for us in terms of intervention, of making connection between different communities, of promoting sense of community. And I think that this may really open, getting really into that, into the role of social media and the role of the virtual opportunities that we have can really open new spaces also for community psychology. We know for sure that also clinical psychology has made a shift related to the incorporation of digital technologies. And now I think that this is also something that we need to consider, even if probably many of us are still thinking, probably I'm one of those people, that it would be not so easy to think about community without thinking about the possibility of people to interact directly, to meet, to hug, but at the same time, we need probably to consider how the tools that technology offers us can support these processes, which are in a way also have been challenged by the COVID situation, because everyone now is in a way willing to come back to real life encounters, meeting, but at the same time, it's also interesting to see that sometimes people are also in a way worried about going back. Some people have maybe lost some of their capacity, abilities. We have also probably lost some spaces where we had the chance to engage, discuss, maybe also manage conflict. And probably we have to think about how those processes can be managed and also using technology. I think that we are very lucky this afternoon, because we will have the chance to listen to Flora and to her research. But we have also the chance to engage into a discussion and see the perspective on Flora's research of Alexander Schouten, who is an associate professor of business communication and digital media at the Department of Communication and Cognition at Tilburg University. And I think that this is also a very important opportunity for us to engage into a conversation with someone who's working on community from a very different perspective. And so I think that this is also something that is really needed, that is more and more needed, that is collaboration across disciplines. So I think that this could be also for us a nice opportunity to strengthen new connection and consider how also different approaches can be incorporated and related to the work that we are doing. So I think that I have taken even too much time, and now it's time for me to leave the floor to Flora, who is opening her speech, and I will also allow her to share the screen, and the floor, as I said, is yours. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to listen to you.
Thank you for inviting me to have this speech. And thank you for this presentation and introduction to my work. I am currently a postdoc research fellow at the University of Naples, Federico II. And I would like to start this presentation underlining that actually this research was developed before COVID-19 pandemic. So it likely refers to previous ways of interaction. But I believe that as Cinzia was introducing, these results and this perspective have a huge potential also with reference to the pandemic and the implication it brought about as to the need to rely on technologies and technology-mediated interactions. So probably this is the pandemic provided further enrichment for the exploitation of these results. And also I would like to say just at the start of the speech that this research is basically about what happens when local communities and online communities merge. So this is just what Cinzia was saying in her presentation, so that I would not think about online and local communities as two separate communities, because modern technologies, as we will see, allow basically to connect everywhere. So also when we are leaving the places and spaces of our local communities. So as a start, what to expect from this webinar and from my presentation? The overall aim of this presentation is to shed further light on modern local community experience. That is how everyone, us, but others, everyone experience their neighborhoods and cities. So their local communities, basically. How to do so? I think it is not possible in modern times to shed light on modern local community experience without taking into account that we are an always-on generation. We are always connected. And so we can do this also when we are in squares or going around in our city or on public transportation and so on. This has implications for both how we experience online spaces and on-site spaces. And so basically my aim with this presentation is to provide a new perspective, I believe, on what happens when there is an interplay between the communities with their physical but also social features, and how citizens experience and are tied to their community, so basically their self in community, and how they use their social media with specific reference to ubiquitous and locative social media, so those related to the experience of the surrounding context, and specifically when they use this kind of social media with community-related aims. Two main research questions will lead this presentation. That is, first, which are the needs underlying this kind of ubiquitous and locative social media use? So basically, there is a relation, probably, as we will see, between the characteristics of the communities of belonging and of the surrounding context, and whether citizens decide to use or not this kind of social media in a way which is related to their community of belonging. The second research question is whether this kind of social media use can actually influence somehow how citizens experience their local community of belonging. And so basically whether this can provide a different experience and probably an enriched experiences, because they can allow to merge the opportunities we can have online and offline together. So which are the roots for this perspective? First, we need to disentangle modern local community experience. When I think about this kind of experience, which is modern one, I think about two main kind of researches we have in literature. On the one hand, we refer to the traditional, we can say, experience of local communities. That is the experience of communities which have boundaries defined and which are characterized by in-presence interactions and experiences, and by sharing spaces and activities and engaging in shared aims and so on. So basically what happens without social media. In modern times, this kind of experience is changing, as we have seen in several recent researches, and communities are becoming somehow closed. What I mean when I say that they are becoming closed is that individuals are mainly relating into their already known private groups, which means that the social functions, to say, of local communities are weakening, or at least it seems like this. And shared places in the communities like bar, squares, libraries, and so on are becoming transition places more than aggregation one, so that they are lived always on a hurry probably, and individuals do not experience them as places where they can meet new people basically. On the other hand, another elements we have to consider when thinking about modern local community experience is that social media exist. And basically, since they exist and now they are mobile social media, so we can use them also when we are not at home. This somehow changes inevitably what we can feel and opportunities we can get and how we can experience our context, or also offline context. And this is why in recent studies, social ecosystems and social context have been defined as a hybrid or ubiquitous, as I will refer to them, because they can be experienced both directly on site, in presence, or online, so in a technology mediated way in the same time. So an example is that I can be in a square or down in the street, and I can also use my mobile phone and see who is around. We will see with the ubiquitous social media. And basically this can have some implication as to how citizens live their community and how they feel with reference to their community. Yet few studies try to put together these two perspectives and see basically what happens when we think about communities in this way. So something more about ubiquitous locative social media, which are the main topic, let's say, of this new perspective. This kind of social media can promote a different, a renewed, and a richer focus on local places and local resources. Because through this kind of social media, citizens can share information, so they can gain awareness about places, social gatherings, social opportunities, but also about what is happening in their local community, how others feel, what others think, and so on. So it is a kind of, in Facebook terms, we could say it is a kind of wall where everyone can post information and get updates about what is happening around. On the other hand, we can say that this can basically enhance the opportunities also for interaction and relationships. And in this case, we are not only thinking about online interactions and relationships, but since these social media are related to the surrounding context, this kind of relationships can also move offline easily. For example, a kind of ubiquitous social media, as we will see, is dating applications, which are also called people nearby application, because they allow users to see the people being around and provide their users with what has been defined as a ticket to talk. That is a polite excuse to start a conversation with a stranger. So basically they allow to start an encounter, an offline acquaintance, without the embarrassment of doing that with no excuses to talk, which is quite common in modern societies. So in this way, they can hold potential for strengthening the local social fabric and providing broader social networks in local communities. Two main social media are of interest within this presentation. The first one is Instagram. I think we all know Instagram, but probably not all of us have thought about it as a tool to experience local communities. Instagram basically allows to share information about the localization of the photos we post. And it also allows to share meanings through the captions and the hashtags we include. So basically, Instagram includes pictures about the places of cities, neighborhoods, and local communities at large. And citizens can contribute to these pictures with their own perspective, but they can also see how others see those places of their community by using the searching features, for example. The other social media I will focus on is just people nearby application. People nearby application are basically all those applications who allow users to look for who is around, basically, and who is using that application so that they can also know probably who is interested in starting a conversation, in meeting new people. These applications, especially in Italy, are specifically used for dating, usually. But recent studies showed that also dating applications are used with community-related aims too, which means that basically their users also use these applications just to meet new people in the surrounding area, in their community, to feel part of that community, to enter the local social network. So with no romantic or sexual aims, which is the kind of user I will deepen in this presentation and in the studies I will talk about. Basically, to sum up, we can say that Instagram holds potential to increase the awareness about the places in the community and probably also promote a certain kind of representation of those places based on how citizens feel, experience, and represent those places. While people nearby application are mainly related to the social relationships and interactions individuals can have within their community, and so basically to the social capital they can experience and be part of. So, as I said at the start, there are two main research questions I'm trying to address within this presentation, and now I will focus on the first one, which again is which are the needs underlying the use of ubiquitous locative social media with community-related aims. Why this research question? Because basically, as I tried to show in the previous slide, both Instagram and people nearby application are not born with reference to the local community. What do I mean when I say this? Is that basically both this kind of social media are not tightly related to the local community experience. Their main aims, which are the ones they have been spread with, refer to sharing photos or to meeting new people for romantic or sexual encounters, for example. But this has nothing to do with the local community. Despite this, users started using this kind of social media with community-related aims. So basically, the idea underlying this research question is that if users opportunities and that my neighbors are trustworthy, yet my environment is not safe, for example, or my community is not already supportive, I will have more chance to use Instagram to keep in touch with the neighborhood. So to sum up, it seems like Instagram could represent a strategy to keep in touch with the social dimension of the neighborhood, basically when users are tied to that neighborhood, yet they do not feel that their neighborhood is a safe environment to be attended, or that some other characteristics are hindering them to keep in touch with the local social meaning. So basically when they feel uncomfortable in attending those places and gatherings which are available in the neighborhood. In this way, Instagram may represent a kind of implicit attempt to avoid a broken window effect. That is, for example, the neighborhood is unsafe and something more happens to support that perception of unsafety. Instead, in this case, when the neighborhood is unsafe, I do something for avoiding that perception and rather experiencing the neighborhood as a place which offers social opportunities. one issue which arose during this study is about the role of the neighborhood specifically, because the results suggested that individuals being part of the same neighborhood were not that consistent in evaluating the characteristic of their neighborhood. So basically, this was the first study arising doubts about this kind of issue, and I proposed two hypotheses to be tested, basically. The first one is that neighborhood may just have lost their role due to globalization and individualist tendencies and so on. So basically, we are global citizens and no more citizens of our neighborhood or city, which is a kind of strong hypothesis. However, another hypothesis referred to spatial spillover issues. So that basically due to the advances in technology and so due to the opportunity to move around the city and across cities and across countries, individuals may have more similar perceptions about the local communities also across neighborhoods and across cities. So just to say that in this case, neighborhood would not have lost their role, yet they would have become somehow similar across them. So in order to test also these two hypotheses, in addition to the hypothesis about the interplay between the characteristics of local communities and of PNA's users, in the second study, both Italian and Dutch users were involved with the collaboration of Alexander Schouten. And in this case, again, multi-level path analysis were run. And again, we kept the neighborhoods as the level 2 units of analysis to test their role in this case. The neighborhood level predictors were the same as the previous study, yet at the individual level, bridging social capital and loneliness were added to the sense of community due to the specificities of this kind of social media. That is, that it allows to keep in touch with other people and to have more social relationships. What about the results? First, the higher the supportive environment, the stronger the negative association between sense of community and this PNA's use. That is, when users are tied to their community and feel that their community is supportive, they are less likely to use this kind of social media, which makes sense because if my social needs are satisfied by a supportive community of belonging, I have no reason to resort to other means to satisfy them, basically. On the other hand, when it comes to bridging social capital, we can see that the higher the supportive environment, the stronger the positive relationship in this case between bridging social capital and disuse of PNAs. In this case, we can see that bringing social capital has the secondary benefit of providing a more open and minded attitude towards social relationships. So basically, when I feel that my community is supportive, but I have an open-minded attitude, I can probably resort to more and more strategies to keep in touch with new people. Also, in addition to what the community is already offering as a supportive environment. On the other hand, when the community is friendly, the association between bridging social capital and dating PNA's user is negative and stronger. So basically, when my community is already friendly, I do not need to resort to people nearby application to when I have an open-minded attitude. When it comes to the loneliness, we can see that the more local places which are connoted as social ones are available in the neighborhood, the stronger the positive relationship between loneliness and the use of this application, which may be due to the fact that the availability of social places basically allows users, in this case, lonely users, to move their relationships offline. So in this case, a people nearby application may just represent a tool to make the first move. But then these interactions can become in-presence encounters and interactions. In this case, the availability of socialization opportunities, safety, and trust does not play a role instead. So putting together all these relationships which emerge, we can see that dating people nearby application used with reference to the local community of belonging and so with no romantic nor sexual aims can answer probably two main needs. On the one hand, they can help users in broadening their local social network when they feel alone, yet they are interested in meeting new people. So when basically they are open-minded and interested in enlarging their pool of relationships. On the other hand, this kind of use can also support the tie citizens feel to their neighborhood when this is meant as a relational and supportive entity. So basically, they can support their sense of community probably. In both cases, as it happened for Instagram, this kind of use is more likely to happen when the community is represented as offering social opportunities, yet its characteristics somehow discourage citizens from grabbing these opportunities in a direct way, basically. So, for example, as I said before, making them uncomfortable in experiences, offline places or relationships. So, as to users' social experience, I would like also to mention that the relationship between loneliness and bridging social capital was not significant by itself, yet it became significant in the interaction with the community features. And this is relevant because it shows that actually local community features do play a relevant role and even a more relevant role than individual social inclination when it comes to using this kind of technologies with the community-related aims. So basically, the research question about whether there could be a link between social media community-related uses and the characteristics local communities have in modern times seems right. What about the issues about neighborhoods? In this study, we basically controlled for spatial spillover issues because Italian and Dutch communities are kind of far communities. And what happened was that neighborhood still represented landmarks in their member lives. So basically, when the communities are not all that close, they do play a critical role and there are differences among them. However, the differences vary in the extent according to the kind of characteristics we are going to evaluate. So, for example, when we talk about safety, trust, so environmental and broader social features, citizens rely on community shared experiences. So they basically evaluate these characteristics in a kind of similar way. Differently, when we are thinking about characteristics which attain to the individual experiences. So, for example, the availability of social spaces or of socialization opportunities, citizens are more likely to rely on their own experience more than on shared representation, and so to provide different evaluation based on how they lived those spaces and opportunities. When it comes to the second research question, that is, which are the paths through which these uses can enhance users' tie to their local community, basically, 2 studies were run again using Instagram and people nearby applications as the 2 focus. And in this case, for Instagram, a sample of Italian Instagram users took part again in a survey, and structural equation modeling were used to test a model, which I represented here for clarity. And basically in this model, the main hypothesis referred to Instagram providing a greater awareness about the availability of both socialization opportunities and social places in the community of belonging. And through this awareness, enhancing citizens' sense of place, that is the tie to the places in their community, and sense of community, that is the tie to the community as a social entity. What happened when running the analysis was kind of different, because here are the results. And what happened is that Instagram does provide actually this greater awareness and perception about the opportunities and social places being available in the neighborhood. And through this, it really enhances users' tie and identification with the places in their community. However, this enhanced perception does not enhance a sense of community in turn by itself, because the mediation of sense of place is needed to provide a significant impact on sense of community too. So basically what emerged from this study is that consistently with the affordances Instagram provides, its community-related use is able to strengthen and impact basically the experience citizens can have of their community. Yet sense of place is critical in order for this to impact users' sense of community too. So in this way, and putting together the result from the first study and this third study, we can say that Instagram could actually represent a different way to experience the community of belonging and specifically its places, and to have a richer perspective on them, basically, because it allows to exchange stories and points of view and experiences and meanings. On the other hand, when it came to people nearby applications, again, Italian and Dutch users were involved, and structural equation modeling was run. And this was the model we hypothesized in this case. So basically, this kind of people nearby application use would have obviously enhanced the frequency of face-to-face encounters, because this attains to the main aims of this kind of application. And through this, it would have broadened the local social capital, but also the feeling of being involved in the community of belonging that is the neighborhood. And at last, through all this, it would have impacted the sense of community. Again, also in this case, the results were kind of different, because it ended up showing that the frequency of face-to-face encounters has no relationship with local social capital, as well as with the feeling of being an involved member of the community. Despite this unexpected result, this use of dating people nearby application still impacted users' local social capital in a direct way. And through this, it impacted their sense of community. So in the end, what emerged showed that it is not the concrete moving the relationship from online environment to offline environment, what actually impacts the social capital or the sense of community, but knowing that there is a social network around with which I am in contact and of which I feel part is enough to feel that I have a local social network I can mobilize if I need help, or to which I can refer if I need a suggestion, and also to feel I am part of the surrounding community. So basically, being able to move online, move offline, the relationship is not critical, but what seems critical for users belonging to the community and experience of local community is being able to keep in touch with people being around, and people nearby application offer rich hints in this sense, because they offer what I was mentioning before as ticket to talk. So I'm trying to sum up all the results from these 4 studies to let you know which are the take-home messages from this presentation. First, we can see that citizens' tie to their community of belonging has not been weakened by modern global phenomena, as some studies suggest, but rather citizens have tried to identify and have endeavored to identify different strategies to sustain and support their sense of community and to experience their local communities in a different way, basically. Then the second take-home message is, which are these strategies? Ubiquitous and locative social media could be these strategies, actually, thinking about what emerged from the studies, because they can hold a huge potential as to satisfying citizens' identity, social and aggregative needs, which are needs kind of rooted in their community experience. Further, they can also enrich their users' experience of their local community. So basically, they could, it is possible that the social media could start like a virtuous circle of new ways of experiences and being tied to the community. And the last take-home message is that neighborhoods still represent psychologically relevant landmarks in Italian citizens' life, and the interdependence of among the members of the same community, so among the members of the same neighborhood, still exists, even though it has become looser as to some of the features of local communities. Basically, these results hold a huge potential as to the new opportunities for working with communities and for being aware about the role that social media do play in our daily life, also with reference to communities, and take it into account in a responsible way in our studies and interventions. And I thought about bringing also an example of how these results could basically be used when working with the communities and with the urban places, because it can be kind of strange thinking about urban places which are something physical and thinking about using social media to keep in touch with them. Yet, as Cinzia was saying in her introduction, the pandemic offered a lot of suggestions about how to work in this way, and the project Prospettive di connessioni urbane, Perspectives of Urban Connections, which I run with Fortuna Procentese and Rob Mitchell from Denmark, offers, I think, a good example of what can be done using, for example, in this case, Instagram. The aim of this project was to support citizens during the first wave of COVID-19 pandemic. So basically when we were all locked into our houses, because the project was run in Italy. So we were in the middle of the national lockdown. And basically, we aimed at providing citizens with opportunities to experience their life places and feel connected to their community, but in a mobile application mediated way, since they cannot do it in person in that moment. The goals of the project were basically to allow citizens to think about the places in their local communities they thought about as social ones, so the ones to which they attached social meanings, to raise citizens' awareness about other local places, which they may have not known or may have not thought about. And also, basically, to allow citizens to keep in touch with local social meanings when they were hindered from doing so in traditional ways because they could not go out for a walk, for example. So this project used Instagram, as I said, and it relied on participatory urban sensing. That is, citizens were asked to provide viewpoints and information about the places in their city. And these were gathered through an Instagram account, which was Connessioni Urbane, and all the photos about the social places in Naples were also stored on a virtual map users could open at any time, so that they could basically visit their city from their home and see it through other sites, because also other photos were online. And on the other hand, we had a participatory hashtagging practice. That is, we launched an hashtag, which was Incontrarsi in città, in English, meeting in the city. And this was like a provocatory hashtag because this allowed citizens to think about when they could, and where they could meet other citizens in a moment when we were all focused on being locked into our houses. Overall, I will not talk that much about this project. It was just to provide an example, but I would like to say that the results from a first study evaluating the impact of this project showed that users were willing to visit new places they saw through the map and through the Instagram account. So basically, I would say that the project succeeded in promoting awareness and curiosity towards local places and keeping the focus on social places in local communities when we could not experience them. So the implication for the research, which I will try to summarize in 2 questions, into provocatory questions, can be, for example, how we can support the social dimensions and the socialization opportunities within local communities by taking into account that modern local communities are complex, are ubiquitous, and so by taking into account basically the role social media can have with reference to this. And then another question is, which is the potential of ubiquitous and locative and maybe others social media in enriching local community experiences, because these studies are among the first one trying to connect online and offline experiences. So it is likely that there is a huge potential which we have not explored yet as to this social media. And last but not least, I identified these kind of uses of social media as potentially adaptive strategies to keep in touch with local meanings and representation in a different way when the communities did not allow to do so. But probably citizens are resorting to lots of other strategies we have not identified yet to do so. So basically, which are other strategies which could be useful to answer citizens' community-rooted needs? And I would say this is also, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Flora. I think that your presentation provided a huge amount of food for thought, because I think that probably each of the results that you mentioned would deserve truly depth discussion, because I think that the implication that we may consider in terms of our activity are huge, and probably we did not have enough time to think about them whole. But so I have some, well, I would have probably some comments and some questions, but I would leave now the floor to Alexander, who is our main discussant. And I, of course, invite also all the other participants to this webinar, maybe to think about questions and comments that they want to share. They can, we could do that using the chat, or given that we are not so many, we can also open the microphone and comment live. That's something that we probably do prefer. So Alexander, now is your turn to, we will see how I mean, from your perspective, which are the main point for reflection, the main challenges, and also your suggestion in order to improve or use these tools for community interventions.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having me. Let me first start by saying that if I look what Flora has already achieved during and after a PhD, I feel hardly qualified to be a discussant here. When looking at all the papers he has published and all the research he has conducted, I think she's an excellent researcher. I feel completely free to ignore everything that I say, because I think you know better than I. But having said that, and me being here, I can might as well say a couple of things. So first of all, if people don't know me, I'm an associate professor at Tilburg University, and I'm a communication scientist. So I'm not a psychologist or community psychologist, but I have studied online communication in small groups and interpersonal communication for my entire career. And Flora and I met because Flora asked if she could visit Tilburg to collect data and do some research together. And so that's how I ended up here. So I think this topic is very interesting, because I have always looked at online communication from an online communication only perspective. So I have never even realized that, which sounds dumb, to be honest, but I have never even realized that there is an interaction between online and offline. In my area, most of the studies that are conducted still focus mostly on online only communication. And only recently we have started studying multimodality in online communication, so people communicating both on and offline with each other and communicating locally and online. So I think this is a very interesting research topic to in my field as well. I do have a couple of points, but I want to show something, because since a year or so we have a new app here in the Netherlands. It's called Amigos, and it's exactly what you are studying. So it's so this is, well, I don't know if you can see it, but this is where I live, and these are the people around me who are in for something social. So this is really an online community application. So you can just enter what you're up to, in for a beer, in for a party, in for a walk, in for exercise, and then people can react to you, and you can meet up with like-minded people in your local community. So I thought it was very interesting. But when you visited the Netherlands, this was not here yet. So it has been in the last couple of years. I think in the last year even. I think what is interesting about your talk and also about this app is that that I think there is a big distinction to make between a psychological sense and a real sense of community. because I think for many people it's important to have a psychological sense of community, and maybe more important than actual participation in community. So I come from a more interpersonal communication perspective, and there you see that that individual differences and well, they create needs and they define for a large part how people use communication. I would be interested in how people perceive their local communities from a more individual perspective, because I can imagine that many people think it's quite enough to be involved in the community by simply reading about the community and being part of an app without actual interaction. And they may feel just as part of a community as people who actually go outside and do something. You know, me being from the north of Europe actually enjoys being in a community without actually participating and having to talk to people. I was wondering if you have any thoughts about that, so that may be one point for discussion. Also, what I found quite interesting, that if you look at your results, it kind of seems that, and I wrote it down, but I made a lot of notes and I have to see where it is. So I think the basic idea is that when your neighborhood is actually safe and supportive, so an actual neighborhood characteristics, then people have less need to use social media or Instagram when they have a higher sense of community. But when they place a lot of trust and they feel that the community is supportive, then the relationship is the other way around. So I think what's also, so that basically relates to two perceptions of neighborhood and communities. So one is more related to like the physical, the perceptions of the physical characteristics of the community. So it's enough places, it's safe outside, etc. But then you also have a more effective social, don't really know how to call it, perception of the neighborhood. And it seems like these two have differential effects on social media use, and maybe the other way around as well. So that's basically what I distill from your from the studies you presented, and also from the papers I have read before your presentation. So I think that's interesting as well. And finally, I wonder. So because you started out the presentation with, and I also read it in some of your papers. So you start out with, so we have lost a kind of a sense of place and a sense of community that we may be able to fill with social media. But I wonder if that's the case. And I don't know the answer, but I would like to know your thoughts about is social media, can that be used as a compensation for lost community, or is it like an addition? Because in the conclusion of your presentation, you said that you said that relationship with local communities has not been weakened. So I wonder what your thoughts are about that. Well, so those are my main points. I hope this is at least somewhat coherent and interesting, but I'd like to know your thoughts.
Yes, thank you. I will start from the last part, because actually when I started my PhD research, I thought about social media as a compensation, basically building on the literature, but saying that social media can represent a compensation and that sense of community was weakened, basically. But then from the results of my PhD studies, which are the ones I presented today, I would say that social media are not a compensation, basically. They are probably an enrichment, an addition to what we can already find around us, because the fact that these social media are used with specific reference to the community of belonging makes me think about the fact that probably users are still tied to their community, because if I do not have a sense of community and I do not have an interest towards my community, I would probably look somewhere else, not in my community, for finding places or people to meet and so on. So basically, this is why I thought there still is an interest in the community of belonging, and I changed my perspective as I did in the presentation, basically from compensation to addition, because I think that this is where these results can bring us. So this is as to the last question. As to the first one about the sense of community, I think that at least in Italy, we experience the same. Individuals say they are part of communities, and they are actually part of communities like neighborhoods, cities, and so on. But this does not necessarily mean that they are actively involved and participating and interested in keeping in contact with those communities. An example is that when Fortuna and I ran the study about Instagram and we collected data, lots of citizens asked us, which is my neighborhood? Because they were not sure about what to think about, because they said, I only go home and sleep in my neighborhood, but then I do all my daily activities in other neighborhoods. So to which neighborhood should I think about? This was their main question. So what I would say, starting from their words, is that they knew they were part of their neighborhood, but they also knew they were not interested in their neighborhood, and they were interested in some other places and some other relationships. So I think that there is actually a difference in saying you're part of a community and behaving like you're part of a community. And this is why this research started, basically, because also when looking around and also when reading the literature, what I noticed was that local communities seemed somehow weakened, so that individuals were not relating to each other in the same community and were running around for doing stuff daily, and were not meeting their community fellows, to say. But and this is what it seems like when you look at communities and local communities from an observation point. Then from these studies, it emerged that when running around, they can also meet people, for example, because some applications work in this way. They can see the profiles of the users they met during the day, for example. So basically, this is why I thought about this social media as a different way to experience communities, which may be probably more consistent with the characteristics of modern communities, but also of modern daily life, because we are always busy doing something. So basically the time for pure social relationships is a few daily. And there was another question about the characteristics of the neighborhood interacting with social media use. I focused on the different relationships which emerged as interacting among them, because the model was always a unique model. So basically, I think that your point of view is another way of reading the data, because it provides another point of view, another perspective about the results. I did not think about the characteristics impacting in a way or another, being basically different among them, but it is interesting because actually this difference exists. So thank you for this.
Thanks.
May I also, I have some, I would say, comments or or questions. I was wondering, because you used the pictures and you used the Instagram, you analyzed Instagram basically. And let's say, well, I'm not an expert on the tool, but basically, as it is based on using pictures and photos, what we mostly hear about the way people use their image is that they, in a way, try to, I would say, beautify themselves, for example, because there is an issue that is related to how you present your identity. So I was wondering if there is also this kind of process regarding, for example, the pictures of the cities, because I think that this is also something that could be interesting, because I was thinking when you were illustrating your results, that in a way, all these tools, Instagram probably more than the other social media, or maybe in a different way, they really contribute to build a narrative and a social representation of the local community, which in a way may be stronger in terms of, I don't know, making me feel comfortable as part of it. Or it could also be, those social representation could be also used to, I don't know, push people's involvement also, for example, to make change that is needed. But this does not seem to appear, at least from what has been found. And this, of course, connects strongly with actual participation, because in a way, I think that based on your results, what we can say is that probably those tools could be support community psychologists also in helping us to create communities, maybe communities of interest, helping people to find other people to that share common needs. At the same time, I was wondering what happens when we are really thinking about communities that are, I don't know, where there are many social issues, where there are problems. So what kind of use could we do of those instruments? Or can they help us, or do we need to rely on, let's say, traditional methods? I'm not expecting that you have a solution, but I think it could be interesting to engage in this kind of conversation.
Yes, thank you for these comments, because I really think it is an interesting issue. And first of all, I totally agree that Instagram tells a story about people, but also in this case about places, about cities. And I did not specifically depend on whether individuals beautified or not the photos of the places they post, but I would say, thinking about the photos I saw through Instagram, that individuals are more likely to beautify themselves than the places. That said, I would also add that we only post on Instagram and on social media at large the photos we like. So basically, it is always a point of view, and it is always a point of view focusing on the beauty side of the subject of the photo. And however, that is a point of view about that place, about the city. And when you use hashtags, you can also see others' point of view. And there are on Instagram lots of profiles which advocate causes or which are managed by associations. For example, in Naples, we have lots of urban regeneration associations using Instagram, so that when you look for an hashtag about a place, for example, you also find their photos, which show not only the beauty side, but also the side that they want to regenerate or they are working on. So basically, I think that just because everyone can put his or her point of view on Instagram, you can see also the bad side of places, basically. And this relates probably to the final comment, because I think that the practices of participatory hashtags are powerful in addressing community issues and in thinking about how to improve communities involving citizens. And probably in modern societies, using social media to involve citizens is a strong tool we have to work with communities. Then you can also build a community of interest basically using hashtags, because if you launch a participatory hashtag like we did, then individuals following and searching that hashtag are those interested in that topic basically. Or if you open an account about a certain topic, then individuals interacting with that account are somehow interested in that topic. And I can say that for our project, the one I told about, in the end, we are still receiving pictures from citizens about social places in Naples, despite lockdown is ended like 1 year or more, 2 years ago, basically. And the project is not asking for more pictures actively through the account, yet they are still sending us pictures about Naples. So I think individuals can be engaged in this kind of practices and can participate in this kind of actions, but then you need to know how to engage them through social media. And I think you need to be aware of how social media work in detail to be aware about their features, and then you can use them to engage people.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment or questions for Flora? I think we can tolerate 1 minute silence, because I think that people are thinking about what you said and or the implication of this work for now, and I would say also for the future.
I was thinking about persistently over your presentation, which I enjoyed very much. You see, when you see in the form of a presentation of a doctoral thesis, you see some things, but here we see a more relaxed and a more yes, it's so different, it's so much, it's so greater. So thank you for this presentation today. But what I was thinking is that, do you think, because it's place-based and neighborhood-based, do you think that these forms of communication have any chance of being like, you know, this communities of interest, like Cynthia was saying, with a more academic or disciplinary interest? Do you think that we have a chance there? Because maybe within our different generations, for instance, I have to admit that I look at Instagram and I don't capture the interest of it. I try, I really try. I want to be modern. I want to be updated. I want to keep myself young in an open mind. But I look at that and I keep looking and say, what the heck is it? And I make the effort. I said, do you think that we have any chance of you know, at least bringing these older generations to maybe not old people, at least I can say, I just speak for myself, but do you have any chance of having disciplinary or a more kind of disciplinary interests in that? So do we have a chance on that particular niche?
Yeah,
So you want us to find a way to promote, develop community
Yes.
psychology through Instagram.
Yes.
Okay, that's the point. Okay.
I was trying to make it in a civilized way, but you just went to the point. Okay, that's it. That's the question.
Okay.
yeah. To be honest, I think that everything can be promoted through Instagram in an interesting way, but it depends basically on who you want to reach. Because I agree, it is a matter of generations, and probably the youngsters are using Instagram more. I can see that younger people is no more using Facebook anymore, for example, while my generation was using Facebook and is still using Facebook insistently. And so basically, I think that yeah, this is an issue Fortuna and I talk about really often, because probably you need to integrate different ways of communicating and different social media if you want to reach everyone. Then, for example, you could have the same page on Facebook and on Instagram for reaching different targets, and you could have a website for another target, and then you can also use Instagram to advocate academic causes, for example. But probably having the connection with the website would help for academics to find everything again, because, for example, if on Instagram you put a story, then it disappears after 1 day, or you have to keep it on evidence if you want to let it be visible. So I think it all depends on who you want to reach and what is your target using, basically.
Can I say something about that as well? So of course, Instagram is very visually oriented, of course. So it's about the perfect picture. So it depends on your goals that you want to achieve with a certain platform. So for scientific purposes, I think that's just that Instagram is less suited because of the visual aspects and the visual prominence. So that's why you don't see a lot of scientists using Instagram, but they're mostly on Twitter or LinkedIn promoting themselves, because that's more verbally and written text-based. But it's quite interesting to see how it will develop, because now for us Instagram is new, but the younger generation is now on Snapchat and TikTok, and also has Instagram, but their main communication channels have switched to WhatsApp, of course, and Snapchat and TikTok. So I'm unsure about what the future will bring, but I don't think we should rush and get involved in all these different platforms. Although it is interesting to follow up on them. So.
Yeah, because it seems that in a way, yes, those tools are able to support the development of ubiquitous communities, but this seems that those communities are generational in a way, even if they are connected to local places. So I think that this is something that we should really consider, because of course there is an issue that is related to digital literacy that maybe sometimes we take for granted, that, for example, young people are able to use digital tools, but maybe they are using Instagram because it's easy and allows an easy access. But at the same time, I think that we also need to consider the connection within communities between generation. And I think that probably, I don't know if we will have the chance to have tools that will connect the different generation. Probably this would be one of the work that would still require our effort as engaged scholar and in promoting community and relationship and good quality of life.
Good point. That might be a good point, because it used to so of course you see you've always had that generations flock to themselves, and even when I was young, we teenagers would sit somewhere where all the people weren't. But maybe now it's easier to as when you were young, to get away from other generations, and maybe a bit more difficult to get those cross contacts between different groups. So which was always part of the local community, but has become less important now. But that's actually maybe an interesting research question. How you can so if there is a way to connect the different groups and different generations in a way, actually quite, yeah. Thanks.
Yes, and I would add that actually I did not put the age range in the slides probably, but in our studies, for example, about Instagram, also adults did take part in the survey and did provide their experience. However, they are a small part of the sample basically, and the largest part is under 35. But there are adults on Instagram, and there are adults on people nearby applications too. So I think it mostly depends also on individuals.
Okay, so I think that now we are, let's say, reached our time, because 6 has have already passed. If there are no other comments or questions, I want to thank Flora, I want to thank Alexander for their contribution, for the work. Flora presented a very interesting research. She has been brilliant. Also, there are many comments in this sense in the chat that I think it's worth for us to read. And so I really thank everybody for being here. And I hope that you will be able to be with us for our next webinar. And I thank you, and I wish you a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you to everyone. Bye.
Bye.